All right. What's up, primates? I'm Shane the Skeptic, and as always, I thank you for tuning into my channel to watch my content. Today, I want to talk a bit about atheism, what it is, and you might notice that in the title, we see atheism, and then atheism again, hyphenated, and then, of course, we're going to talk about religion, and its relation to morality, because these are interesting topics. Religion and morality have their relation in conversational topics to atheism. So first I want to start by talking about what atheism is. But before that, I want to throw some shade at Canva as a fucking website. No, Canva's actually great. I normally use it to make both thumbnails and graphs. But I made some graphs and then tried to make a PDF for this, and I can't download my shit for whatever reason. So I'm just going to share screen and go to what I made on Canva. So I'm going to get into that right now because, look, people, even amongst atheists, there is not a completely universal agreement about what the word atheist or atheism means. And I want to talk about the different ways people define atheism and make my case for why other people should define it the way that I do. So I'm going to make my case for that here by talking about the different types of atheism that there are. And of course, visuals are very helpful. So let me get into that. Let me see. Chrome tab. Let's see. The Canva one. I got it. All right, cool. Look at the chat really quickly. See. Okay, nothing too active. So let me just full screen on my end to see. Okay, that's clear enough. So let me see if I could zoom in. Let me go to my other tab while I'm open. Yeah, okay, cool. So here we see atheism, and you'll notice I'm made these two circles. So what is atheism, right? Atheism can be either of these two things. To be most common, most blunt, most clear, this is what atheism is. You have either lack of belief that any gods exist, belief that no gods exist. How about I call myself anti-fictionalist? Right. Well, but someone can not believe in gods and not be opposed to fiction too, right? So like there are different types of fiction out there. So I guess I kind of understand the point, but I think we should be clear about what these terms are, right? I think it's important anyway. So I'm gonna scroll to my next one. They're also called, now keeping the colors the same so you understand what they are. Now, again, we'll look back up. The red, lack of belief that any gods exist. And in the blue, we have belief that no gods exist, right? Two classic understandings, common understandings of atheism. And people will argue between them. The former is also called atheism hyphenated, a without, theism being belief in gods. And then you have agnostic atheism, soft atheism, weak atheism, lack theism, non-theism. All of these terms refer to the former type of atheism. And then the latter is referred to as atheism. Very commonly, people will just say atheism to mean belief that no gods exist, right? Positive atheism, to be more specific, hard atheism, or strong atheism. There are more terms for the former than the latter, at least that I myself am familiar with. You might wonder why I didn't put Gnostic atheism on that list, and that's because people would say that pertains to knowledge. Someone could believe there is no God without claiming to know it, so that's not really necessary for this list. Now, I'm going to group these different the people who adhere to these positions into two categories: Group A atheists and Group B atheists, right? So Group A, the people who lack belief that any gods exist, And then group B is people who believe that no gods exist. This is key at the very bottom here. And this is a very important thing that I want people to take away. If you are either a hard atheist and you insist, because I don't have a problem. I actually believe there are no gods. So I would actually be in group A. But I argue that we should define atheism as group A. And I'm gonna argue for why that's the case. All members of group B are necessarily also members of group A. If you believe that no gods exist, you have to not believe that any gods exist, right? But not the other way around. And I don't understand why this part is so controversial, but not vice versa, right? Vice versa is not the case. So there's this weird need that people have. It's like the lack theists don't have a problem with the hard atheists calling themselves atheists because they still lack belief in any gods, right? But a lot of the hard atheists, I don't have a problem with their position, but they seem to insist that everybody define atheism the way that they do. And I think that that's problematic for this reason. So, of the people who identify as atheists, now we could argue about the size of the circles. Obviously, like I didn't go collect some data. I just made a graph to make a point. So maybe that blue circle is bigger, maybe it's smaller, but that's kind of beside the point, right? Defining atheism as group A atheism includes all people who do not believe in any gods. So if we define atheism that way, we say atheism is not believing in gods, right? Then if you're a person who doesn't believe in a god, then you're an atheist. And this is why if somebody says, well, I'm agnostic, okay, if you don't believe in a god, then you're what I mean when I say an atheist, right? And that's part of the reason that I define it that way. I'm going to give another argument after this, though. But defining atheism as group B atheism excludes a vast number of people who identify as atheists from the definition of atheism. And that is really a pretty big part of my yeah, I don't know. I guess this part of the graph is like the summary of my point here. Okay, let's see. I always used if the number of gods you believe in is 0, then you are an atheist. Yeah, I would go with that. And I don't understand this necessity. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people when they try to define atheism as hard atheism, they're always going to reference the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and they're going to go, look right here, it's defined as belief in gods. And what's really bizarre is people who make this argument in other circumstances tend to recognize the way that language works. The definitions are descriptive, not prescriptive. But then all of a sudden, with this one word, they're prescriptivists and saying that everybody has to go with this definition. It's kind of insane to me. Like I'm not disagreeing that is a definition of atheism, but if we're defining it as the lack of belief, that is more inclusive of the people who identify with that position. And I'm going to make another argument for why that's the case. I could have made a graph if I put more time into it, but it's not really like I need to. So let's just put it in a syllogism, right? I've posted this before, but I'm going to do it again. So premise 1, A as a prefix in a word means the lack of or the absence of. It can also mean negation. Not denying that, but it can mean absence or lack of, right? And theism is the belief that at least one God exists. Therefore, that prefix A paired with theism is the lack of or absence of belief that any gods exist. And I think we should be, I don't know. I think that it's a weird thing that people continue to argue about. I get really frustrated because I've just had the argument so many times. It's like I don't even want to hear it anymore. And people get so angry over it. They really do. Like I've had people attack the fuck out of me because they're atheists who define atheism as hard atheism and I define it as lack atheism. And I'm like, whoa, man, this is what we're fighting about? Like I can understand arguing about it, but like being malicious toward each other over this kind of thing, like that's part of my problem with religion is how divisive it is. But we're being this divisive over the definition of a word. Okay, cool. Like this is crazy. This is crazy. So, um, yeah, that is something I just wanted people to consider from here. Now, um, let's talk about religion and how we should look at it, and let's talk about new atheism because I talked about new atheism lately. Um, I feel like this is something that needs to be considered because I've been a bit on the fence about whether or not I'm still a new atheist. And for those of you who don't know, I'm talking about. Let me bring up the Wikipedia description just to clarify for people because it's not always uh, clear. I'm sorry here, you guys. My bad. I'm going on the wikis. All right. Mentioned this in a previous stream. Not everybody was here for that. So I'm gonna go share my screen again, and we're gonna cover this to talk about what it is, because I'm considering, and I would ask other people to consider, to reconsider. Um, do you still hold your new atheist views? We talk about questioning everything. Sometimes, once we improve our epistemologies, once we come to learn more things, we should re-question things we previously have already questioned. Um, and I mean, truth doesn't fear investigation. A solid conclusion can withstand my skepticism. Um, okay, got it. Cool. The term new atheism was coined by the journalist Gary Wolfe in 2006 to describe the positions promoted by some atheists of the 21st century. New atheism advocates the view that superstition, religion, and irrationalism should simply not be tolerated. Sorry, too many fucking tacos before this drink. Instead, they should be countered, criticized, and challenged by rational argument, especially when they exert undue influence, such as in government, education, and in politics. So far, I'm still with that, right? Major figures include Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett, collectively known as the Four Horsemen, and Ayan Hirsi Ali, known as the Plus One Horsewoman. Talk about this again. New atheism often criticized what writers such as Dawkins described as indoctrination of children and the social harms caused by perpetuating ideologies founded on belief in the supernatural. At the time, critics of the movement deployed pejorative terms such as militant atheism and fundamentalist atheism to malign vocal atheists. Um, let's see. A 2004 publication of The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason by Sam Harris, a bestseller in the United States, was joined over the next couple of years by a series of popular bestsellers by atheist authors. Harris was motivated by the events of September 11th, 2001, which he laid directly at the feet of Islam, while also directly criticizing Christianity and Judaism. And we're going to talk about criticizing Islam and Judaism more specifically soon. 2 years later, Harris followed up with a letter to a Christian Nation, which was also a severe criticism of Christianity. Also in 2006, following his television documentary series The Root of All Evil, Richard Dawkins published The God Delusion, which was on the New York Times bestseller for 51 weeks. In a 2010 column entitled Why I Don't Believe in the New Atheism, Tom Flynn contends that what has been called New Atheism is neither a movement nor new, and that what was new was the publication of atheist material by big name publishers read by millions and appearing on bestseller lists. Nietzsche might make the case for this, right? Um, on the 6th of November 2015, the New Republic published an article entitled Is New Atheism Dead? The atheist and evolutionary biologist David Sloan Wilson wrote, The world appears to be tiring of the New Atheism movement. In 2017, P.Z. Myers, who formerly considered himself a new atheist, publicly renounced the New Atheism movement. I actually didn't know about that. How did I miss that? Prior to reading this article. The book, The Four Horsemen, the conversation that sparked an atheist revolution, was released in 2019. I'm actually going to read that book, so I'm interested in that. So, do I still think that Yeah, you're just wrong about this, and I don't know why you have a hard time accepting that new atheism is a recognized term that's gonna be referenced in academia, and it does describe a specific movement. Um, I used to be one of those people who was like, "New atheism," and it just irked me, but I was presented with evidence that I was wrong, and, I tend to change my mind when that happens. But let's talk about criticism of religion, which again isn't entirely new. But new atheism is referring to a specific movement, a set of ideas held by specific atheists, though. Um, there's so I why am I critical of religion personally? Mainly because I see it as being divisive inherently. I should have got my Quran, but you know what? If anybody has a Quran, I would say if you read the Quran, you will see very quickly, that it starts off by villainizing non-believers. I mean, I'm very early into the book, and it's like repeatedly telling me that as a non-believer, I mean, it's not like speaking to me, but as an atheist reading it, as a non-believer in Islam reading the Quran, what I'm reading is a bunch of you don't it, people who don't agree with this are bad for these reasons. They're these different types of bad, and they're deserving of hellfire. Well, when you teach people that everyone who doesn't agree with you or your religious views is deserving of hellfire or that they're bad, well, that's going to influence the way that you think about them. And when you teach these ideas to your kids are going to act differently toward people because they have different religious beliefs, right? And religious people have to accept about each other what I have to accept about religion. It is here to stay. I don't think religion is ever going to go anywhere. Religion can become less common, but it's always going to be here. Um, okay, I don't know why I'm addressing your comments, but I don't know why you're in such denial, that you were wrong about this. Like it's just if you read academic papers about atheism, theism, arguments for them, like okay, you know what? I've presented you with evidence. You can do more research yourself and learn about the movement, or you could just ignore all the evidence that you're wrong. And you know what? Sometimes that's just the way cognitive dissonance works. Um, But I am critical of religion because it's divisive, but you have to keep in mind that religion is heavily ingrained in culture, and this is a problem that gives me some difficulty because I wanna get along with people of all different cultures, all different nationalities, and, the reality is if somebody is from, let's say, Algeria, a Muslim country, that person, if you are very regularly, speaking very negatively and criticizing. And I mean, Islam does need to be criticized. And we're going to talk about why. But if you're always like, I hate Islam, this, that, and the other. A friend of mine the other day posted, I am Islamophobic. He labeled himself that. And I think we should have a conversation about Islamophobia. Because I mean, what is it? What is Islamophobia specifically? Um, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to voice a bunch of rhetoric that's going to fuel hatred toward Muslim people. I do, however, want to criticize the bad ideas that Islam teaches, such as everyone not agreeing with us is deserving of hellfire, their negative views about gay people, their misogynistic views about women, intrinsically belonging uh as in the kitchen, basically just being homemakers and not pursuing careers. And of course you see debates between Muslim scholars about like feminism and about women and whether or not women should be able to pursue education. But it's a predominant view in Islam that a woman's place is as a homemaker. And a lot of Muslims are very critical and threatened by the idea of women taking jobs in the workplace of modern women. They don't like that, right? Um, so this is a problem. Let's think about Judaism, right? Judaism and Christianity. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, everybody here probably knows, but if you don't already, these are called Abrahamic religions because they all stem from the God of Abraham. The story, if you were raised Christian, you're familiar with this of, Abraham takes his son. God's like, hey, go kill your son. I want to see if you do it. I want to see you listen. and then he goes to kill him, and then the guy goes, hey, hold on, I was just testing you. Um, well, also, it's kind of a funny thing because testing is something you do when you don't know something, right? Like if you test someone, you do it to find something out, which implies that God is not omniscient, but that's a story for another day. There's a lot of reasons that that God is incoherent. That God I know does not exist. Not just belief. I know that that God does not exist. Um, so let's think about this. Imagine that if we reflect on Nietzsche. Now, a lot of people link Nietzsche to the Nazi movement, and I actually recently listened to this audiobook, Nietzsche and the Nazis, because you can't deny that a lot of Nazis, including Hitler himself, and a lot of the top intellectuals of the Nazi party in that time, uh, they were influenced by Nietzsche. Now, granted, Nietzsche actually said a lot of things that were praiseworthy of Jews, and said a lot of things that there were a lot of things that he disagreed with the Nazis on. So it's not like they got their ideas from him directly. But let's imagine that you're criticizing an author of the past, right? And you're seeing some of their rhetoric, and then you see the Holocaust. Like if I was looking at, or let's say it wasn't Nietzsche, let's say I was reflecting on an individual from Germany, right? And I was saying like, well, what kind of person was this? And I was seeing him very critical of Jews, saying all these different things about Jews. Given that the Holocaust happened, let's say he said these things shortly before the Holocaust, I would probably be viewing this person as anti-Semitic, as racist, right? And I think a lot of us should consider, when we criticize Islam, something to keep in mind is if you look at, for example, what the Communist Party in China is doing to the Uyghur Muslim population. And as humanitarians, I think we should speak up more about this. It should become more common. If you look at what they're doing, you have to keep in mind that historians may see what the Communist Party of China was doing to Uyghur Muslims. And let's say you happen to become famous in the atheist movement. You're one of those people. You're one of those big speakers, right? Things that you are saying about Islam are going to be taken into consideration with the fact that what was going on in the world at the same time was that. Now, granted, truth is what matters, so we should be critical of ideas. No idea is undeserving of criticism. But I think we need to be careful in how we criticize ideas and the people who adhere to them, because some ideas you really can't criticize without criticizing people who adhere to them, because ideas simply influence the way people are. And um but people are also, the other thing to keep in mind about people who maintain certain ideologies is some people will say they're Muslim, or that they're Jewish, and if you get to know them, you'll find out that they're not a practicing Jew or they're not a practicing Muslim, but they still identify with it because it's still their culture. And um this is kind of a, I don't know, this is kind of a tricky area. You want to, I mean, I should ask yourself what your values are. Do you dislike religion because people go to war over religious beliefs? Because for me, that's one reason that I dislike religion and would like to see less of it in the world. One of the reasons is because it causes wars, and oppression, right? So when we attack it, we should also consider and be careful about whether or not we're fueling the same kind of hatred, the same kind of negativity in the world. And this is where we get conflicted because, like, if you are a Muslim tuned into this channel right now, I want to get along with you and I want to get along with the people of your culture. I also have to accept that your book, your holy book, says a lot of very negative, untrue things about me. And it's difficult for me to get past the fact that these are things that you think about me. And all I can really do is be a good person and be decent to you and hope that one day you come to terms with the fact that your book was wrong about non-believers. I mean, not to say there aren't non-believers who are gonna fit your book's description of them. I'm not gonna argue that with you, but you also have to accept that there are a great number of non-believers who do not fit your book's description of what they are, and thus your holy book got something wrong. The Quran was wrong. And that cognitive dissonance, what do we do here? I don't know. I'm not coming to this stream saying that I have all the answers. I'm here posing the problems and the questions that need to be considered. I'm sorry, I'm reading this. Some identify themselves with their ideas, and it kind of makes sense that people do. Or their idea of God is integral to their sense of well-being, so when it's criticized, it is an attack on their well-being. Right. A lot of people think God is the source of all goodness, so when you're criticizing or saying bad things about God, it's like you're going to say bad things about the source of good. Like from their perspective, it's like you are crazy. When they hear you think God is bad, that they feel the way I feel when I hear someone say that joy or well-being or health or pleasure is bad. It's like, okay, then we don't mean the same thing by some words that we're using, evidently. And religion, this is the thing. People do get some of their morals from religion, but I think we're coming to a time where a lot of people are see religion as a way of keeping itself alive is adapting, right? We see this with the Catholic Church. Oh, suddenly atheists go to heaven. Thanks. Just starting now, or were you wrong before? Like, how does that work? Atheists get to go to heaven now. Great. Um, we see a lot of churches that used to insist that you wore certain church clothes are now accepting of you showing up in jeans and a hoodie or whatever, a t-shirt, like it doesn't matter, because they have to bend for society. They have to bend to keep themselves alive. And as we see that happen more, I think we're going to start seeing more people who are religious adhere less to their religions. I think we're going to see that a lot more than we're going to see people deconverting from their religions, you guys. I think that's something we need to consider about the future. Is we're going to see more Muslims drinking alcohol, right? But not necessarily less Muslims, right? And I'm picking an example of a specific thing that's considered haram. But if you know Muslim people and you know a couple of them, you probably know somebody who, though they're Muslim, they drink alcohol. Funny enough, they normally still avoid pork. I guess if you're going to pick a sin, and it's not that they don't think alcohol is a sin, it's just that they believe it's a sin and they do it anyway. Just like I know alcohol is unhealthy and I'm drinking it anyway, right? So um, you could think something is bad and still do it, right? Religion is just a vehicle for teaching ethics and social morals. It's not the only kind, but it's historically the most common in most social groupings. Yeah, see, and I don't think Lone Wolf is wrong here. Um, maybe absent of the word just, but it certainly is this. Even if I'm going to say it's more than this, it certainly is this. I'll read this. And you have some good commentary, Lone Wolf. He said, "That's right. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Bobert are both 99% atheist about all gods that aren't the one they really like." Oh yeah, I mean yeah, that doesn't have much to do with the God that they do believe in, though, right? They do believe in a God, and obviously, and their religious views are very hurtful of their ideas, and they have power. These are people who actually are in politics. That's a big deal. Um, Marjorie Taylor Greene with her fucking Jewish space laser, her anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. You have that. You have their anti-LGBT rhetoric, right? Which I mean, I talked about this on TikTok recently. I'm going to bring this up here again. Consider the fact that with the Christian nationalists and the politicians who cater to them, these would be Republicans. You have a group of people that advocate to their base that they arm themselves to the teeth with assault rifles. It's not they don't just defend the right to bear arms. They are gun obsessed people who are telling you that you should be stocking up on guns. This is the type of rhetoric you're getting from these politicians. And they tell these people, the same crowd that they tell to arm themselves to the teeth, that LGBT people want to groom their children and LGBT people are bad and evil and this, that, and the other. The gay agenda, right? The trans agenda. Well, you see people when you're telling people, the same group of people that you told to arm themselves to the teeth. Marjorie Taylor Greene went and said that pretty soon in a few decades, there aren't going to be any straight people. So I talked about in, let me pull up another book I have here on the nature of genocidal intent by Dr. Jason J. Campbell. I'm making a few book recommendations today, I guess. We're going to talk about the claims of genocidal intent. And this is the thing. I think religion influences and inspires genocide. Did I mention that? That's a pretty big problem that I have with it. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who is religious supports genocide. So I do not want to be strawman as having said that. But I think religion influences genocide. It's religious people and their views towards one another, right? I'll talk about the 5 foundational claims of genocidal intent. Well, so the third one's what's relevant to what I was talking about. So I'm actually just going to go to the third one. The extermination of targeted group members is justified because they threaten the existence of members of the protected population. So saying that pretty soon nobody's going to be straight anymore is obviously saying that gay people are a threat to the existence of heterosexual people. You're telling people that you told to arm themselves to the teeth that gay people are a threat to the existence of heterosexual people. Like, yeah, this is like, I don't know what you expect those claims, the combination of those claims to result in. I would probably guess mass shootings. I would probably guess attacks on gay people. You're fueling hatred against them, and their hatred for them comes from their religious beliefs. And that's a problem that I have, is if there is a valid argument for why a person who's attracted to someone of the same sex should not pursue love or sex with them, if there's a good argument for that, somebody present me with it, please. If I've been wrong all this time, I like finding out when I'm wrong. Never heard one. It's always based on some mindless, emotional thinking. No rationality whatsoever. And then, yeah, so Kanye went and said that he said some praiseworthy things of Hitler on InfoWars, on fucking InfoWars. Kanye West, like, if you would have told me a few years ago that Kanye West would be on InfoWars spewing anti-Semitic rhetoric, saying that he said Hitler invented microphones. First of all, that's just not in highway. What is Kanye talking about, dude? Hitler did not invent microphones and highways and railroads. No, he didn't. Kanye West said that. The Black Hebrew Israelites, they get their views from the Bible, right? What do Black Hebrew Israelites believe? Well, they believe that they are the descendants of the ancient Israelites from the Bible, right? And their theology is similar to that of the Jews. They believe that they are God's chosen people. And a lot of people might pause and say, yeah, but a lot of religions think that they're God's chosen people. Here's the thing about Judaism, though, is they believe that their ethnicity, the descendants of the of the ancient Israelites, that they're God's chosen people. So when one of your beliefs is that you're God's chosen people, again, over other races of people, that's a racist belief. So one of the beliefs of Judaism is racist. And I don't want to say anything that fuels anti-Semitism. I don't want to say anything that fuels violence or hatred against Jewish people. But I want to address the fact that it is racist to think that other people, that you are chosen over, that your race, your ethnic group is God's chosen people over other ethnic groups. And obviously that's going to lead to some problems. That's going to offend people, right? So there's always going to be problems between people who believe that and people who believe otherwise. There will, like, as long as Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and Hinduism all exist, there will be a lot of examples of religion causing people to not be able to get along with each other. And I need to say that I'm aware of the fact that with or without religions, people are going to not get along. That's going to happen. There are going to be cases of people not getting along. I believe religion fuels people getting along less. I want to live in a more peaceful world. I want to live in a more I want us to be on better terms with each other as the human race. I think it's time. Like, one of the things we need to overcome is the stupid, mindless, endless bickering we have about each other. And there's a lot of irony in what I'm saying, in the way that I'm saying it. But um, yeah, a lot of us need to stop and think: how do we get people to get along better? And we have to accept that people will never change their mind about certain religious views. So I don't know how to reconcile certain things. Maybe some cultural differences, it's like, I don't know how we reconcile them. My view that I don't get to decide what women are or aren't allowed to wear in public. For some people, it's like offensive to them that I don't think I should be saying that, right? I had this incident with a Muslim on one of my live streams on TikTok, where basically this dude started screaming at me and telling me I was a fucked up person because he asked me would I be comfortable with my mom wearing a bikini, to which I responded, I don't pick my mom's bathing suit, like, and also no, because I don't sexualize it. So it's just a swimming suit, right? Like, I don't. So yeah, but to him, he can't not see wearing a bikini as sexual. To him, wearing a bikini is inherently being sexual. So to him, me being okay with my mom wearing one, which again, it's weird to me that you think that I should be picking her bathing suit. To me, that's weird. To him, it's weird that I'm not sexualizing this and therefore not uncomfortable by it. So um this is difficult, you guys. And like I said, I'm not here with the answers, and I wish I had them. I wish I knew, like, how do we get people to get along? How do we get people to stop fighting each other? But all I could say is, if people look at us as all being on different teams, right? People are going to see me as which team? The atheist team, right? I want us to be team humanity. That's what I want us to be. And some people, and that doesn't have to be secular humanism, because I'm actually talking about including religious people. So just humanism, if that, right? I care about humanitarian work. I care about I don't know, I care about kindness. So I guess, like, for me personally, I'm reconsidering a lot of my views, and I want to ask other people to do the same, and ask ourselves and each other, how do we what is a good productive goal to have when we have conversations? Right. Well, that's why I made the distinction between secular humanism and then mere humanism, right? Because someone could be a humanist without being a secular humanist. And some people I've actually seen, they've heard the term secular humanism so often that when they hear humanism, they think secular humanism, and then this causes them to get confused about religious people being humanists, and that's, a whole thing that occurs. Um, so yeah, um, but I just yeah, as long as religious people think that other religious people are the enemy, or that anyone who isn't a member of their religion is the enemy, we're going to be divided by religion. And this is why we will be less divided, I believe, if religion continues to decline as it already is. And this is one of the reasons we should keep putting forward arguments for atheism. We should keep putting forward arguments against theism. We should continue to debunk uh, claims of miracles, continue to debunk proposed arguments for the existence of God. I think it's important. We got to, I want to see less religion in the world. I do want to see that. But I also want to accept, I need to come to terms with like the fact that there are people who will never change their religious views. And of the people whose religious views will never change, I do not want to divide myself from them. So I want to, I guess, reconcile like how to continue to get along with these people, how to continue to, and sometimes you just avoid certain conversation with certain people. And that's tricky because obviously we should strive to learn how to have conversations about controversial issues without being divided. But my primates, that is so much easier said than done. We can tell ourselves that all we want to, but that doesn't change the fact that there are certain topics that are just intrinsically divisive. If you have a good friend at work and you're pro-choice and you know your coworker is pro-life, if you really like your friendship with this person, you do got to ask yourself, like, do you guys have to talk about abortion? Do you have to? I mean, you can't never talk about it, because if you never talk about it and the other side keeps talking about it, then they continue to spread their ideas and their arguments, and then they go uncriticize. So you can't not partake in those conversations at all. You got to talk about politics at some point. You got to talk about religion at some point. But I guess you got to find your place to do it and not do it. And that's also important. So, yeah, I want to kind of get to morality. So, stuck between, I want to read a little bit, and I do mean a little bit, of both of these books. Some people might notice I bring these two up more than most other books. Some philosophical literature, I don't think people understand that it's not the same thing as reading. Like sometimes you read a book and you get the point, and there's no point of reading that book again. You got it. You get it. You don't need to redo that. And then some books, Aristotle, Nietzsche, you could read a paragraph and there you can talk about it and think about it for an hour, right? And I think I mean, yeah, obviously I have a lot of moral disagreement with Nietzsche, and I'm going to get into why. But I want to read something that conveys a lot of his views on it, right? Because, yeah, Nietzsche, in a sense, argues that morality is immoral, which I know sounds like very contradictory, I guess. But what he kind of argues is that morality is something that is harmful to the human race. And one of the criticisms he has of religion is that he thinks morality from religion has inflicted this upon us. And in some places, I agree with him. And in some, I'm like, well, nah, bro. But let me just read a little bit here. So, on custom and morality from Human All Too Human, right? On the history of moral sentiments. He says this. To be moral, correct, and virtuous is to be obedient to an old established law and custom. Whether we submit with difficulty or willingly is immaterial, enough that we do so. He is called good, who, as if naturally, after long precedent, easily and willingly, therefore does what is right, according to whatever this may be. As, for instance, taking revenge, if to take revenge be considered as right, as amongst the ancient Greeks. He is called good because he is good for something. But as goodwill, pity, consideration, moderation, and such like have come with the change in manners to be looked upon as good, to be looked upon as good for something, as useful, the good-natured and helpful have later on come to be distinguished specially as good. In the beginning, other and more important kinds of usefulness stood in the foreground. To be evil is to be not moral, immoral. To be immoral is to be in opposition to tradition, however sensible or stupid it may be. Injury to the community, the neighbor being understood thereby, has however been looked upon by the social laws of all different ages as being eminently the actual immorality, so that now at the word evil, we immediately think of voluntary injury to one's neighbor. The fundamental antithesis which has taught man the distinction between moral and immoral, between good and evil, is not the egoistic and unegoistic, but the being bound to the tradition, law, and solution thereof. How the tradition has arisen is immaterial, at all events without regard to good and evil or any imminent categorical imperative, but above all for the purpose of preserving a community, a generation, an association, a people. Every superstitious custom that has arisen on account of some falsely explained accident creates a tradition which it is moral to follow. To separate oneself from it is dangerous, but more dangerous for the community than for the individual, because the Godhead punishes the community for every outrage and every violation of its rights, and the individual only in proportion. Now every tradition grows continually more venerable the farther off lies its origin. The farther off lies its origin, the more this is lost sight of. The veneration paid it accumulates from generation to generation. The tradition at last becomes holy and excites awe. And thus, in any case, the morality of piety is a much older morality than that which requires unegoistic actions. I don't know why I was having such trouble reading today. Because the font, I don't know. The alcohol from last night, who knows? But it seems as though you'll see this a lot of the time with Nietzsche. Nietzsche seems to, and I think wrongly, give religion too much credit for morality. Certain things that he thinks Christianity should get credit for, I disagree with him on, and think really come from more of an evolutionary basis than rather being taught to us by Christianity. There's good reason for the sake of community, not to cause harm to one's neighbor, not to steal, etc. Right? But that is a way that it's viewed. So let's consider that. Now, I want to talk about my concept of morality just a little bit, and then I'm going to get into this because Aristotle talks about pleasure, and I think that's very important to kind of explain what I mean when I talk about a pleasure-based moral system. Oh, hey, what's going on? Iris Gaming had to get a new account. Well, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in and being here. So, if we're trying to figure out what a word like means, like what it is to be something, right? Then what we should do is we should take examples of cases that we understand to be whatever that word is, and then start seeing what those examples have in common. This is called particularism, this approach. So I'm going to explain for example, if I was trying to define religion, right, what should I do? I should think of a few examples of things that I understand to be agreed upon examples of religion. So I'm going to look at Christianity, I'm going to look at Judaism, I'm going to look at Islam, Hinduism, and I'm going to say, okay, people agree that these things are religions. So if I'm trying to figure out what religion is, I should see what properties all of these examples of it share, right? And so when we're trying to figure out what good is or what morality is, I think what we have to do is we have to look at things that we would agree are examples of good, agree are examples of moral actions, and then see what properties they have in common. And then, of course, do the same with bad or immoral actions. Now, with both cases, people could disagree on specific examples, but as long as we have many examples, we could actually still come to arrive at some understanding of what it is that a word means. So when we look at morality, I give this argument. Like, let's say I'm going to go with type A actions and type B actions. I'm listing two types of actions here, right? I'm not going to tell you which one is moral or immoral, but type A actions include feeding homeless people, helping someone in a wheelchair by pushing their wheelchair to where they need to go. Let's see, helping an old lady cross the street. Let's see, helping a stuck animal get out of a fence. Those are type A actions. Now let's look at type B actions. Type B actions, let's see, robbing an old lady, child abuse, just assaulting people, and rape. Those are type B actions, and killing, right? Nobody sitting here is genuinely wondering which, I said, type A actions and type B actions. Nobody sitting here is genuinely wondering whether type A is moral or type B is moral. Nobody's sitting here wondering that. All of us have a linguistic intuition about what we mean by moral, what we mean by good, we understand on the basis of this linguistic intuition that the type A actions would be the categories of actions that comport with what we mean by moral. So we should look at the properties that they have in common. To be blunt, to put it quickly, I believe the foundation for morality, the basis of morality, right, is the decrease or minimization of suffering and the increase or maximization of pleasure. Pleasure, well-being, flourishing. I'm putting well-being and flourishing. These are in pleasure. Now, this being the basis of morality isn't to say that everything that has these properties is therefore morality. It's just that these things are the foundation of morality. So something could have to do with these foundations without being in the realm of morality, and that's not inconsistent, right? So if we think about it, if I say what you did is immoral, what makes sense is, okay, what is an example? Because if I'm wrong here, somebody tell me. What is an example of an immoral action that doesn't increase suffering or decrease one's pleasure or well-being? Like, that is what it means for something to be immoral, is that it does that, right? You did something intentionally that did that to somebody. If you are deliberately doing something to cause harm to another person, I think that's what we mean, right? So if you're you're unnecessarily causing suffering to people, I think it's immoral. You're unnecessarily decreasing pleasure, that's immoral. Now, if you are promoting the pleasure of people, promoting the well-being of people, then what you're doing is moral, right? So we're going to review, because when you talk about pleasure, a lot of people only think of pleasure as in bodily pleasure, as in the hedonistic sense of the term. But that, like, pleasure is not limited to a hedonistic source of pleasure. I talk about Aristotle's use of the word eudaimonia, right? Eudaimonia is a form of pleasure. You'll see the word translated as happiness, but it's clearly not simply happiness. It's more like a form of happiness or pleasure, which is arrived at through living a virtuous lifestyle. So you could have that too, which could come from responsibility, which could come from temperance, which could come from whatever, right? Now, getting into Aristotle's words on pleasure to help kind of make my case about it and what I mean when I refer to it. Because I think, again, morality is rooted in pleasure. Okay. Pleasure and pain are proper subjects of study for the political philosopher, since he is the ruling craftsman of the end that we refer to in calling something bad or good without qualification. Further, we must also examine them because we have laid it down that virtue and vice of character are about pains and pleasures, and because most people think happiness involves pleasure, that is why they also call the blessed person by that name, Makarios, from enjoyment, Charion. Now it seems to some people that no pleasure is a good, either in its own right or coincidentally, on the ground that the good is not the same as pleasure. To others, it seems that some pleasures are good, but most are bad. A third view is that even if every pleasure is a good, the best good still cannot be pleasure. The reasons for thinking it is not a good at all are these. Every pleasure is a perceived becoming towards the fulfillment of something's nature, but no becoming is of the same kind as its end. For instance, no process of building is of the same kind as a house. Further, the temperate person avoids pleasures. Further, the prudent person pursues what is painless, not what is pleasant. Further, pleasures impede the prudent thinking, and the more we enjoy them, the more they impede it. No one, for example, can think about anything during sexual intercourse. That's not true. I could be fucking and thinking about epistemology at the same time. I can multitask. I can do it. Further, every good is the product of a craft, but there is no craft of pleasure. Further, children and animals pursue pleasure. To show that not all pleasures are excellent things, people say that some are shameful and reproached. You can go with heroin as an example, like drugs, right? And that some are harmful, since some pleasant things cause disease. You could say, yeah, drug use, unprotected sex, too much of it, right? To show that the best good is not pleasure, people say that pleasure is not an end, but a becoming. These, then, are roughly the things said about it. Now listen here. These arguments, however, do not show that pleasure is not a good, or even that it is not the best good. This will be clear as follows. First of all, since what is good may be good in either of two ways, as good without qualification, or as good for some particular thing or person, this will also be true of natures and states, and hence also of processes and becomings. And so, among the processes and becomings that seem bad, some are bad without qualification, but for some person, not bad, um, and for this person, actually choice-worthy. Some are not choice-worthy for him either, except sometimes, and for a short time, not on each occasion. Some are not even pleasures, but appear to be. These are the processes, for instance, in sick people that involve pain and are means to medical treatment. Further, since one sort of good is an activity and another sort is a state, the processes that restore us to our natural state are pleasant coincidentally. Here, the activity in the appetites belongs to the rest of our state and nature, for there are also pleasures without pain and appetite, such as the pleasures of studying, those in which our nature lacks nothing. A sign that supports our distinction between pleasures is the fact that we do not enjoy the same thing when our nature is being refilled as we enjoy when it is eventually fully restored. When it is fully restored, we enjoy things that are pleasant without qualification, but when it is being refilled, we enjoy even the contrary things. For we even enjoy sharp or bitter things, though none of these is pleasant by nature or pleasant without qualification. Hence, these pleasures are not pleasures without qualification either, for as pleasures, things differ from one another, so the pleasures arising from them differ too. Further, it is not necessary for something else to be better than pleasure as the end. Some say is better than the becoming. For pleasures are not becomings, nor do they all even involve a becoming. They are activities and an end in themselves, and arise when we exercise a capacity, not when we are coming to be in some state. And not all pleasures have something else as their end, but only those in people who are being led towards the completion of their nature. That is why it is also a mistake to call pleasure a perceived becoming. It should instead be called an activity of the natural state, and should be called not perceived, but unimpeded. The reason it seems to be, uh, the reason it seems to some people to be a becoming is that it is fully good, and hence an activity. For they think activities are becomings, though in fact these are different things. To say that pleasures are bad because some pleasant things cause disease is the same as saying some healthy things are bad for money making. To this extent, both are bad, but that is not enough to make them bad, since even study is sometimes harmful to health. Neither prudence nor any state is impeded by the pleasures arising from it, but only by alien pleasures. For the pleasures arising from study and learning will make us study and learn all the more. The fact that pleasure is not the product of a craft is quite reasonable, for a craft does not belong to any other activity either, but to a capacity, and yet the crafts of perfumery and cooking do seem to be crafts of pleasure. The claim that the temperate person avoids pleasure, that the prudent person pursues painless life, and that children and beasts pursue pleasure, all these are solved by the same reply. For we have explained in ways for we have explained in what ways pleasures are good, and in what ways not all are good without qualification. And it is these pleasures that are not good without qualification that beasts and children pursue, whereas the prudent person pursues painlessness in relation to these. These are the pleasures that involve appetite and pain, and the bodily pleasures, since these involve appetite and pain, and their excesses, whose pursuit makes the intemperate person intemperate. That is why the temperate person avoids these pleasures, but not all pleasures, since there are pleasures of the temperate person too. Oh, cool. We got Christian up in here. What's going on, bro? He said, if one simply defines morality as X or Y absent of it correlating to something real, it reduces to a tautology of which we cannot ground anything. Simply, there is an asymmetry breaker between alternative views of moral anti-realism, which allow it to be a coherent theory. I'm gonna reread that. He says, simply, there isn't a symmetry breaker between alternative views of moral anti-realism, which allow it to be a coherent theory. I guess it would depend on the views. I guess I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm inclined to disagree. I'm gonna have to rethink that though. Um, The only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. Socrates. I disagree with that. I mean, knowledge is definitely a good, but there are some goods like that have nothing to do with knowledge. Sex is good. That ain't knowledge. I mean, knowledge does increase sex though. So I mean, you got if you know how to anyway. Um, yeah. So today we this is what this stream has been about: the different types of atheism, um, religion, and morality. What role religion plays in morality. And I would say that if you really think about it, if you look at the way that religious people operate in their daily lives, when they talk about morality, if you look at my concept of morality as being, rooted in pleasure and pain, the way I talked about, and pleasure specifically as referred to by what I just read from Aristotle, not simply hedonistic pleasure. If you take that into account, everything that I just talked about, pay attention to the way the people use the word that's moral or that's immoral. Like I recently have been doing a lot of charity work, but let's look at other than the working with a group. Just last night when I went out downtown, was drinking, was escuchando un poco reggaeton. Well, sometimes I stop and there's people on the streets. If I have, and I thought about this recently, if I have money to go out and buy myself fucking $15 cocktails, $10 beers, if I have money to do that, right, then I think I have money to buy somebody some food. And there were these three homeless people, and one of them was like, "Hey, just asking everybody that went by, can you get us pizza?" And I was like, "You know what? Yeah, what kind of pizza you want?" And I asked all of them, and all of them, one of them was vegetarian. He said cheese. All of them wanted a cheese. I was like, "All right, cool. Bet this is on 6th Street." I go, I get some. I asked the guy, "Give me 4 slices of pizza. I'll get 3 cheese. I'll get one Hawaiian. I like pineapple on pizza, and I hope that pisses. I just for if you hate pineapple pizza, people, like this is my grin that when I reflect on the fact that I did something that you hate. Hmm. Yeah, pineapple pizza is good. We were talking about what is good and bad. Pineapple pizza is good. Anyway, no, but like realistically, I fed these three people and I sat down with them and talked to them. Homeless people don't have that a lot. You sit down. Sometimes I go with them to a halal truck and there's a table outside. I'm like, let's just sit down here and let's eat. And a lot of homeless people haven't had somebody sit down and talk to them and treat them like a person and feed them and ask them how they're doing and let them talk about their story if they feel like it, or just talk, or sometimes they just don't even really want to talk. They just want to sit there, right? And that's fine too. But they have company. They don't get that a lot. I haven't had that in a while. Whether you're a religious person or a secular person, did I do a good thing or did I do a bad thing by feeding those three people? Like, was that nice or was that mean? Like you could go down epistemic skeptical rabbit holes and ask, but how do you know this? How do you know this? How do you know this? Why is this good? Why is that good? Why is that good? Why is that good? Right? Play the definition game where you ask me how I define good or how I define moral. And then as I define it, you pick a word out of that definition and you go, how do you define that? And then you pick a word from that definition, and you go, how do you define that? And then once we hit a wall where I can no longer define a term and I have to go with linguistic intuition, you say, aha, I got you. This is what presuppositionalists do all the time. It's really fucking annoying. It's stupid. No offense, presuppositional apologist, but your worldview is the dumbest fucking thing that I can think of. And I want to be less divided with religious people, but with the fucking precepts, I don't even know. I don't know, man. You guys are the most difficult. It's like I could plausibly get along with religious people, but the precepts, it's tough. It's tough. I don't know. Thinking about it, man. Maybe one day I'll meet a presuppositional apologist who is not a stupid asshole. But so far, that has not happened. So far, just inductively, they all have been that way. But maybe there are some who aren't. I don't know. It's kind of rambling on something different now. Right, compassion and empathy. Right, yeah. Compassion and empathy. Empathy for the suffering. They're sitting there hungry and cold, and like the guy that I fed 2 days ago, and almost had to fight somebody because he was mad at me for fucking sitting down feeding this guy. When I fed that guy, he was lonely. He was by himself. He lives by himself on the streets, right? The three people last night, they travel together, so they're homeless, but they're with each other, I guess, at least. And, but the point is, it is compassion and empathy. And those are good things. They can be good in their own right, of their own without qualification, right? And what you got to recognize is that person on the street could be you one day. And, if we advocate for a world where more of us are stopping to feed and be kind to people who live on the streets, we are advocating for a world that's going to be nicer to us if we end up being the people on the streets. So there is even an egoistic argument for doing this, right? With respect to stupidity, nah, that flat earth shit is really fucking stupid. I mean, really fucking stupid. I'm gonna talk with one of my homeboys about the flat earth thing. He started falling for this shit. But I think I could reason him out of it, at least. You don't have that with precepts. You cannot. You think you can reason a precept out of some? That's cute. That ain't happening. How do you have reason without God? So yeah. Anyway, let's get back to the main points here because I wrapped up. I think I've really talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, let's consider. So far, I'm still on board with the new atheism movement, personally. And I want everybody to consider what the new atheism movement is. And once you come to accept that it is a thing, um, what are your views on it? How do we go about fighting religion? And what are our goals in fighting religion? Because I mean, I don't know. How do we fight religion while simultaneously building and improving relations with religious people? Because I want to do that too. I want that to be one of the goals of my channel here forward. How do we improve the relations between us non-believers and the believers? There's always going to be a divide, but that doesn't mean we can't do what we know how to do to fight it. It's just like poverty will always exist, but that doesn't mean that we can't do what we can to fight it. It actually doesn't have to exist. There is actually enough food in the world, but that's that's a topic for another day, right? Basically, suffering will always exist, but that doesn't change the fact that there are things we can do to alleviate it. Likewise, not getting along, conflict, that's always going to happen, but that doesn't mean that we can't try to take steps to be at the least divided that we could be between people who disagree with us. So, taking all of that into consideration, I'm very appreciative of. Let me see. Hold on. You have to realize that fighting religion is fighting humanity. I disagree with that premise. Religion involved with our species, maybe we should reorient our thinking and not think of it as fighting. Well, some of it is fighting. Sometimes there's a battleground of ideas, and I would prefer a battleground of ideas over a battleground with actual pieces, right? Um, but yeah, no, I mean that's how I'm looking at this. So anyway, whether you be theist, atheist, religious, or secular, I wish nothing but health and happiness for you and everyone that you love. And maybe after I read everything about pleasure, you guys might understand why I started saying that. That's how I close my channel out now. Yep. But that is how I feel. One more time. Whether you be theist, atheist, religious, or secular, I wish nothing but health and happiness for you and everybody that you love. Take care of everybody. Be safe. Oh, and you know what? Let me put the link to my Discord in here real quick because I am going to go on Discord and people who would like to talk about what I've been talking about in the stream. Yeah, let's come together and share ideas and talk about what we could do. Let me see. My bad, everybody. Before I close out, I'm on this. It's ruining my stream here. I know if I copy the top link, it like doesn't always work. So I got to find like the invite thing, which is, I don't really get. Discord is kind of annoying for everybody. Well, shit. Invite people. There we fucking go. Dude, I'm just a boomer. I'm just being a fucking boomer live right now. So I got this. All right. Once again, take care, everybody. Be safe.